Tom and Rex had been through everything together. In the war, they were inseparable. Rex wasn't just a war dog, he was a hero. His sharp instincts saved lives, and his bravery inspired every soldier around him. For Tom, Rex wasn't just a partner, he was family. After that terrible explosion, everything changed. Rex survived, but his body bore the scars of war. One of his legs was injured, and he walked with a limp. But the physical wounds weren't the worst of it. Rex had also lost something deeper, his memory. Tom brought him home after their service ended, but the dog who had once been his fierce protector now looked at him like a stranger. Rex didn't respond to Tom's voice, didn't wag his tail at familiar commands, and avoided eye contact. It was as if the bond they had built over years of war had been erased. For Tom, life after the war was already hard. Nightmares of the battlefield haunted his sleep, and the quietness of civilian life felt like a weight he couldn't carry. Rex had always been the one to pull him through the darkness. But now, with Rex unable to remember their bond, Tom felt completely alone. Still, he refused to give up. Every day he worked with Rex, hoping to trigger a memory. He brought out their old training gear, replayed the sounds of commands, and even showed Rex the medals they had earned together. "Come on," Rex Tom said one morning, kneeling in front of him. "You saved my life out there more times than I can count. You're my hero. Please just remember." Rex stared at him, tilting his head slightly, but there was no recognition in his eyes. Tom felt his chest tighten, but he forced himself to stay strong. Rex had never given up on him, and he wouldn't give up on Rex. Weeks turned into months. Tom tried everything he could think of to bring Rex back. He took him to their favorite trails, played the games they used to love, and even visited the old training fields where Rex had first become a war dog. But progress was slow, and some days it felt like they were moving backward. "Why don't you remember," Tom asked one night, his voice breaking as he sat beside Rex on the porch. "You're my best friend. I'd trade everything just to see you wag your tail at me again." Rex looked at him, his eyes soft but distant. Tom reached out and gently scratched behind his ears the way Rex used to love. For a moment, Rex leaned into his hand, and Tom's heart skipped a beat. But then Rex pulled away, retreating to the corner of the porch. Tom wiped his face, his resolve hardening. "No, we're not giving up. Not now, not ever." One morning, Tom decided to try something new. He brought out an old photograph of the two of them from the war. In the picture, Tom was kneeling beside Rex, both of them covered in dirt, but smiling after a successful mission. "Look at this," Buddy Tom said, holding the photo in front of Rex. "That's us. You remember that day? You found that injured soldier. You saved his life. You've always been a hero." Rex sniffed the photo, his nose twitching slightly. He tilted his head, and for the first time, his tail gave the faintest wag. Tom's eyes widened, hope surging through him. "That's it, Rex," he whispered. "You remember, don't you? It's still in there." Tom's determination grew stronger. He spent hours every day retraining Rex, repeating the same commands they had used in the war. Slowly, Rex began to respond. His movements became sharper, his reactions quicker. Tom could see flashes of the old Rex, the fearless, loyal companion who had saved lives and never hesitated to protect him. One evening, after a long day of training, Tom sat with Rex under the stars. He spoke softly, recounting their adventures. "You know, Rex, you're not just a dog to me. You're my brother. And I'll never stop fighting for you, no matter how long it takes." Rex lay beside him, his head resting on Tom's knee. Tom ran his fingers through Rex's fur, his heart heavy but hopeful. For the first time in months, he felt like they were finally making progress. The days passed, and Tom's hard work slowly began to pay off. Rex was starting to follow commands with more confidence. He no longer hesitated when Tom called his name, and his once distant gaze seemed softer, more familiar. Yet there were still moments when Rex's memory seemed out of reach, and Tom had to remind himself to stay patient. One morning, Tom decided to revisit the spot where everything had changed, the forest trail where the accident had happened. He thought that returning to the place might trigger something in Rex. With a deep breath, he clipped on Rex's leash and they headed out. The trail was quiet, the morning sunlight filtering through the trees. Tom kept his voice calm and steady as they walked, pointing out familiar landmarks. "See that tree, Rex? That's where you used to bark at the squirrels. And over there, that's where you found that hiker who got lost. You were so proud that day," Tom said, his voice tinged with nostalgia. Rex walked beside him, sniffing the ground as if searching for something. They reached the spot where the accident had happened, and Tom stopped, his chest tightening at the memory. He crouched down, placing his hand on the ground. "This is where it all went wrong, buddy," he said softly. "But we're still here, aren't we? We're still fighting." Rex stood still, his ears twitching. Suddenly, he stepped forward, his nose to the ground. His body stiffened, and he sniffed the air, his tail giving a small wag. Tom held his breath. "You remember, don't you?" Tom whispered, his heart racing. Rex looked up at him, his eyes shining with something Tom hadn't seen in a long time: recognition. That moment gave Tom the hope he needed to keep going. Over the next few weeks, Rex's progress accelerated. He started responding to his old training drills with the precision he had during their days in the field. Tom brought out Rex's favorite ball, something he hadn't played with since the accident, and tossed it across the yard. Rex bolted after it, his limp barely noticeable, and brought it back with his tail wagging. Tom laughed, tears streaming down his face. "There you are, Rex. There's my boy." But it wasn't all smooth sailing. One day during a thunderstorm, Rex suddenly froze, his body trembling. The loud crashes of thunder reminded him of the battlefield, and he retreated to the corner of the room, his eyes wide with fear. Tom knelt beside him, speaking softly. "It's okay, buddy. You're safe now. I'm here. I'll always be here," Tom said, gently stroking his fur. Slowly, Rex relaxed, leaning into Tom's touch. Moments like these reminded Tom of how far they'd come and how much farther they still had to go. But Tom never wavered. He knew Rex was worth every ounce of effort. One evening, Tom took Rex to their favorite park. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As they walked, Tom thought back to their days in the war, the missions, the close calls, and the bond that had kept them both alive. They reached a small hill overlooking the town, and Tom sat down, patting the ground beside him. Rex settled next to him, resting his head on Tom's knee. "You know, Rex," Tom said, his voice quiet but steady, "you've taught me more about loyalty and love than anyone else ever could. I wouldn't be here without you." Rex looked up at him, his tail wagging gently. For the first time since the accident, Tom felt like they were truly connected again. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the photo of the two of them from their days in the military. "This was us, Rex. And this is still us, no matter what." Rex leaned in, sniffing the photo, and then licked Tom's hand. It was a small gesture, but to Tom, it felt like the biggest victory of all. One sunny afternoon, Tom sat on the porch with Rex lying at his feet. The warm breeze carried the scent of blooming flowers, and for the first time in a while, Tom felt a sense of calm. He glanced down at Rex, who was chewing lazily on a stick. A thought crossed Tom's mind, and he smiled. "You know, buddy, there's someone who's been dying to see you," Tom said, scratching behind Rex's ears. "Do you remember Emily?" Rex tilted his head slightly at the name, but then went back to chewing on his stick. Tom sighed, but his determination remained unshaken. Emily, Tom's girlfriend, had been part of their lives since before the accident. She had adored Rex and had often been the one to spoil him with treats and belly rubs. She had been a source of comfort for both Tom and Rex during their hardest days. Tom decided it was time for her to help. That evening, Emily arrived at Tom's house carrying a basket filled with Rex's favorite treats and toys. Her face lit up the moment she saw him. "Rex," she called, her voice warm and familiar. Rex lifted his head and stared at her for a moment, then looked back at Tom, unsure. "It's okay, buddy," Tom said gently. "This is Emily. You know her." Emily crouched down, her hand outstretched, holding one of Rex's old toys, a squeaky bone he used to carry everywhere. "Hey there, Rex," she said softly. "Remember this? You used to hide it under the couch all the time." Rex sniffed the toy but showed no other reaction. Emily looked up at Tom, her smile faltering. He's really different now, isn't he? Tom nodded, his jaw tightening. Yeah, but he's still in there. I know he is. Emily refused to give up. Over the next few days, she joined Tom in trying to jog Rex's memory. She showed him old photos of the three of them at the lake, brought out his favorite treats, and even played his favorite game of tug-of-war. At first, Rex was hesitant, but Emily's cheerful persistence seemed to have an effect. One afternoon, Emily sat on the floor with Rex, stroking his fur as she spoke softly. You know, Rex, Tom and I used to talk about how you were our protector. You've always been such a good boy. You kept him safe during the war, and you've done more for him than anyone else ever could. Tom watched from the couch, his heart swelling as he saw Rex lean into Emily's touch. He remembers something Tom said quietly, hope flickering in his voice. Emily smiled. He just needs time. We'll keep trying. The breakthrough came one evening when Emily suggested they recreate a moment from the past. Tom, she said, remember the park we used to take Rex to? The one where we'd always have picnics. Tom nodded. Yeah, that was his favorite spot. Let's take him there, Emily said. Maybe it'll bring something back. The next day, they packed a small picnic and headed to the park. The air was crisp, and the scent of grass and wildflowers filled the air. As they reached the spot under the big oak tree, Tom and Emily spread out a blanket while Rex wandered nearby, sniffing the ground. Look, Rex, Emily called, holding up a ball they used to play fetch with. Remember this? You always ran so fast to get it. She tossed the ball, and for a moment Rex just stood there staring. But then something shifted. He sprinted after the ball, his limp barely noticeable. When he brought it back, his tail wagged furiously, and he dropped the ball at Emily's feet. Tom laughed, a sound filled with relief and joy. That's my boy. You remember, don't you, Rex? Rex barked, a deep, happy sound that Tom hadn't heard in months. Emily's eyes sparkled with tears as she knelt down and hugged the dog. There you are, Rex. We missed you. Tom crouched beside them, his hand resting on Rex's head. You're coming back to us, buddy. Little by little, you're coming back. As the days passed, it seemed like Rex was finally beginning to remember. Tom and Emily worked tirelessly, recreating memories, playing games, and reminding Rex of their bond. There was hope in their hearts, but life, as it often does, had other plans. One evening, just as the sun was dipping below the horizon, Rex suddenly began pacing in the living room. His movements were frantic, his ears pinned back as if something was wrong. Tom rushed to him. Rex? What's wrong, boy? Tom asked, his voice filled with concern. Rex let out a low, mournful howl, a sound Tom hadn't heard since the battlefield. The hairs on the back of Tom's neck stood up. He knelt beside Rex, stroking his fur. Easy, buddy. You're safe. We're all safe, Tom said softly. But Rex didn't calm down. He bolted to the door, scratching at it, barking loudly. Emily came running. What's happening? I don't know, Tom said, grabbing a flashlight. Stay here. I'll check it out. But Rex wouldn't let Tom go alone. The moment Tom opened the door, Rex darted out into the night. Tom grabbed his jacket and followed him, his heart pounding. Rex led Tom deep into the forest, their footsteps crunching against the leaves. The darkness closed in around them, the air thick with tension. Suddenly, Rex stopped. His body went stiff, his nose pointing toward a cluster of bushes. Tom shone his flashlight and froze. There, tangled in the undergrowth, was a small, injured dog, a puppy no older than a few months. Its tiny body trembled as it let out a weak whimper. Oh my God, Tom whispered. You found him, Rex. Just like you used to. Carefully, Tom scooped up the puppy, cradling it in his arms. Rex stayed close, his eyes never leaving the little dog. For the first time since the accident, Rex seemed fully alert, his instincts taking over. It's like he's back in the field, Tom murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Tom and Rex rushed the puppy to the vet, where they learned it had likely been abandoned. The vet stabilized the puppy and commended Rex for his heroic instincts. It's incredible, the vet said. Most dogs wouldn't have known to find help like that. Tom looked down at Rex, his heart swelling with pride. He's not like most dogs. The incident reignited something in Rex. Over the following weeks, his recovery seemed to accelerate. He started responding to commands without hesitation, his tail wagged constantly, and he followed Tom around the house like a shadow. Tom's heart felt lighter than it had in months. But just as life seemed to settle, a phone call turned their world upside down. Tom answered the call with a smile, thinking it might be Emily. Instead, a stern voice greeted him. "Mr. Tom, this is Captain Ward. We need to talk about Rex." Tom's stomach dropped. "What about him?" There was a pause. "There's been a mistake. Rex was supposed to be reassigned after the accident, not retired. He's still government property." Tom's grip tightened on the phone. "You can't be serious. Rex is my family." "I'm sorry, Mr. Tom," the captain said, "but we're sending someone to collect him." Tom hung up, his mind racing. How could they take Rex away after everything they had been through? He paced the living room, his hands shaking. Rex sat nearby, watching him with those familiar, steady eyes. "You're not going anywhere," Tom said firmly. "Not now, not ever." The next day, Tom made calls, reached out to old contacts, and even drove to the base to plead his case. But the answer was always the same: Rex was a service dog, and the military had the right to reclaim him. Tom felt the walls closing in. He had fought so hard to bring Rex back to himself, and now they were trying to take him away. It felt like losing a piece of his soul all over again. On the day the officials came to collect Rex, Tom refused to let him go without a fight. He stood in the doorway, blocking their path. "You have no idea what this dog means to me," Tom said, his voice shaking with anger. "He's not just a war dog. He's my best friend. You're not taking him." The officers exchanged glances, but before they could respond, Rex stepped forward. He looked up at Tom, his eyes filled with something Tom hadn't seen since the accident, complete and utter trust. Rex turned to the officers, barking sharply. It wasn't a bark of fear or aggression, it was a command. The kind of bark he had used in the field to alert his team of danger. The officers hesitated. "Mr. Tom," one of them said, "it seems Rex has already made his choice." The officials left, agreeing to let Tom formally adopt Rex. As they drove away, Tom knelt beside Rex, tears streaming down his face. "You did it, buddy," Tom said, his voice breaking. "You came back to me." Rex licked Tom's face, wagging his tail furiously. For the first time in months, everything felt right again. Tom, Emily, and Rex returned to their routine, but now there was a new addition: the little puppy Rex had saved. They named him Scout, and under Rex's guidance, Scout grew into a loyal and courageous companion. One evening, as they all sat together under the stars, Tom looked at Rex and smiled. "We've been through so much, haven't we, buddy? But you never gave up on me, and I'll never give up on you." Rex leaned against him, his tail thumping softly. In that moment, Tom knew their bond was stronger than ever. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to Emotional Pet Story for more heartwarming and inspiring tales like this one.